It's hardly believable, but with the recent patch, the endgame Ball Lightning build actually got even stronger. So much so that I was able to delete Uber Lilith at level 75, both phases, so quickly that I was able to bypass most of her one-hit KO mechanics. So today I'm bringing you a different version of the Ball Lightning build that most people are sleeping on. We managed to stack an additional 60% damage multiplicatively, which is missing from most other builds, which allows us to completely annihilate any content. We can even use the exact same build with very small tweaks to speed through high-level nightmare dungeons, hell tides, and other content at lightning fast speed, pun intended, because we have near infinite evades that actually reduce the cooldown of our ultimate ability, so much so that we have near 100% uptime on our ultimate as well, which is so ridiculously overpowered. So what's changed with Ball Lightning? Well, we actually got access to the new malignant rings and the sorcerer specific ring, Rasha's Iridescent loop, which is really easy to get from Varshan, gives you a 10 to 15% increased damage per elemental type of damage you deal. Now, a lot of Ball Lightning builds will give you access to 2 to 3 damage types, lightning through Ball Lightning, fire through Burn or Flame Shield, and then frost through Ice Blades or Frost Nova. But I'm actually going to incorporate poison into this build as well, meaning we can get 4 stacks of this bonus, allowing us to reach an additional 60% damage multiplicatively on top of the rest of the build. Moreover, most Ball Lightning builds are still using Veer's Mastery, which is actually bugged and doesn't work, so I'll show you which passive to run instead. So let's go over the skill tree for this build. You want to put 2 points into Firebolt, which lets you access the rest of the skill tree. Firebolt is also one of the enchantments we're going to use in this build because it applies burning damage to enemies, which is another stack from our ring. Then you want 1 point into Chain Lightning, which is actually going to be your second enchantment in the build. Every time we spend 100 mana, it's going to form a free Chain Lightning cast. We put 1 point into Devastation, so we can put 3 points into Elemental Dominance, which boosts our Ball Lightning damage even more. I put 3 points into Potent Warding for more resistance, which helps out at lower levels for survivability, but at higher levels you can take away these 3 points, and I'll tell you where to put them later. For our defensive cooldowns, you want 1 point in Flame Shield, which thanks to Enhanced and Mystical Flame Shield give you increased movement speed and a huge amount of mana regen, alongside 2 seconds of invincibility, which is super useful for boss fights like Lilith. 1 point into Teleport alongside Enhanced and Shimmering Teleport, 1 point into Ice Armor alongside Enhanced Ice Armor, which is going to give you even more mana regeneration, 3 points into Glass Cannon to boost our DPS even more, 3 points into Elemental Attunement, which can randomly cause our defensive skills to reset, which is huge because every time we cast a defensive skill, we gain a big chunk of our mana back thanks to our aspects. Then in the next tree, you want 1 point into Ice Blades. Why Ice Blades instead of Frost Nova? Because thanks to Conjuration Mastery, whenever we have Ice Blades out, we get a bonus 9% damage boost. Also, this is going to proc whenever we use our ultimate ability, as our ultimate can spawn any shock skill like Lightning Spear, which is a conjuration skill, for free. I put 1 point into Align the Elements, which lets us put 3 points into Mana Shield and Protection for more survivability. I put 3 points into Precision Magic to increase our lucky hit chance, so we reset our defensive skills more often. We have 5 ranks of Ball Lightning with Enhanced and Wizard's Ball Lightning, which is the core of the build. 1 point into Static Discharge, which lets us put 3 points into Invigorating Conduit, which basically lets us get a huge amount of mana back from Crackling Energy. Unstable Currents is our ultimate, which basically forms random shock skills for free whenever you spam your Ball Lightning, which is crazy. This is generally one of the strongest ultimates in the game, and with our second gear setup, this is going to have near 100% uptime. I put 1 point into Coursing Current, so we can get 3 points into Electrocution for more damage reduction. I also put 1 point into Convulsion for a chance to stun enemies. You can put those 3 points from Potent Warding into Conduction here when you're high enough level, because this is going to boost our movement speed and increase our farming speed even more. And then for your passive, you do not want Veer's Mastery because the damage bonus is currently bugged and doesn't actually work. Instead, you want Isu's Ferocity. Why Isu's? Because that is also bugged, but in a good way, and it currently actually boosts every type of critical strike damage and critical strike chance rather than just specifically fire. Once these do get fixed, then I'd recommend switching back to Veer's Mastery. Overflowing energy in my eyes is complete overkill. It just isn't required with the gear setup I'm about to show you. Your ultimate cooldown will literally be non-existent anyways. So let's move on to our gear, and the first setup I'm going to show you is for boss damage rather than farming nightmare dungeons or hell tides. you'll notice the eye level of the gear isn't great and the rolls aren't perfect, and that's to show you the realistic setup I had when I defeated Uber Lilith at level 75. On your helmet, the stats you want in order of importance are cooldown reduction, total armor, maximum life, and then maximum mana or intelligence. I've put the aspect of disobedience on my helmet for even more armor stacking. On your chest piece, again you want total armor, but then you want a couple of damage reduction stats. Damage reduction to close enemies, generic damage reduction, but even distant enemies damage reduction is useful, and then maximum life for the final slot. On my chest piece, I put on the aspect of Unwavering, which basically has us up to a 6% chance to reset one of my defensive skills whenever I take damage, which is actually insane because both Ice Armor and Flame Shield give you such incredible survivability as well as mana regen. For your gloves, attack speed and critical strike chance are the two most important stats here. Then you probably want lucky hit chance, critical strike chance when your enemy is injured, and then in terms of the aspect, I put the aspect of control here to give us a bit more damage against immobilized, stunned or frozen enemies. For your pants, the most important stat here is ranks of ball lightning, and ideally you want 4 ranks of this. Then go for percentage total armor, any damage reduction stat, or maximum life. Here I put on the Snow Veiled aspect, which basically gives us unstoppable when we use ice armor and gives us 30% increased armor on top. For your boots for boss damage, I highly recommend Isu's Heirloom, which increases your critical strike chance based off how much movement speed you have. If you don't have these, then you want regular boots with movement speed, mana cost reduction, ranks to teleport, and then I put the Ghost Walker aspect on them, which gives us even more movement speed whenever we cast our defensive skills, which gives us unstoppable. The amulet is actually one of the most important slots because the most important stat for the build comes from here, mana cost reduction, and a lot of it. If you have about 20% mana cost reduction, it becomes so much easier to infinitely spam ball lightning without any mana concerns. Other stats you want here are ranks of mastery skill, ranks of glass cannon, cooldown reduction, and movement speed. This is where I put the ball lightning gravitational aspect for a bonus damage boost. We've already talked about our one mandatory unique for this build, which gives us that massive boost to overall damage. For your other ring, you want close damage, critical strike chance, resource generation, maximum life, and maximum mana. I put on Prodigy's aspect here because every time we cast any cooldown, we gained a good chunk of mana here. For your weapons, I highly recommend using a dagger with a focus rather than a wand or a staff. A dagger has intrinsic close damage bonus and a focus has intrinsic cooldown reduction, which are both insane. For your dagger, you're looking for high DPS and then close damage, mastery skill damage, intelligence, all stats, critical strike damage, or even damage to burning enemies, because remember our enchantment causes all enemies to burn. For your focus, again you want high DPS, and then for stats, cooldown reduction, mana cost reduction, resource generation, and critical strike chance are all going to be very important stats here. I'll also quickly go through the vampiric powers as well for the boss setup, Ravenous for the boost to attack speed, Anticipation to reduce our ultimate cooldown, Prey on the Weak for a bonus to vulnerable damage, Domination for a bonus to stunned or immobilized enemies, and then Infection. Infection is the new thing here, where it applies poison damage to enemies, which is our 4th elemental type for our ring, meaning now you can stack 4 elemental damage types and reach a maximum of a 60% damage boost, which is absolutely huge. For nightmare dungeons or helltide farming, you want to change 3 things from what I've said before. The first thing you want to change is one of your vampiric powers. Remove domination and add metamorphosis. Metamorphosis replaces your evade with a new bat animation, and it gives you unstoppable, and through Prey on the Weak applies vulnerable to all enemies you evade through. The second and third thing you want to change is within your gear. Replace your pants and boots with Tybalt's Will and Flicker Step respectively. Tybalt's Will give you a boost to damage on becoming unstoppable, which through Metamorphosis we get really easily, and it also gives you 50 mana on becoming unstoppable. Now this is the main reason we keep Metamorphosis at rank 1, so that we can come out of unstoppable quicker and re-proc Tybalt's Will, so that we can keep getting that mana regeneration again and again. Flicker Step is the second magical item that basically makes you a killing machine every time you evade. So when you use your Metamorphosis evade through any enemy, you also reduce your ultimate cooldown by up to 10 seconds, which is insane. And because Flicker Step's intrinsic reduces our evade cooldown by a whopping 1.2 seconds with every attack, i.e. every cast of ball lightning, our evade cooldown is non-existent, so we can now just evade infinitely through nightmare dungeons to constantly get unstoppable apply vulnerable, get a damage boost through Tybalt's Will, and reduce our unstable currents cooldown. Honestly, this setup is just so powerful for nightmare dungeons and generic farming. It just requires these 3 tiny changes without changing your underlying build in terms of abilities in Paragon. The Paragon setup is fairly generic for ball lightning builds as they come. I put Adept on the first board for more ball lightning mastery damage. The most important legendary node for the build is Static Surge, which gives you even more mana and makes enemies vulnerable when chain lightning is cast through our enchantment. On this board I put Reinforce for the 15% damage reduction. The next board I put on the Charge Glyph for a 15% damage bonus when we pick up Crackling Energy. Then the Territorial Glyph on the next board, which is super powerful for the build as it not only grants you close damage but also gives you 15% close damage reduction. Other great glyphs to use here include Elementalist, which is basically like our unique ring and gives you a stacking bonus to damage based on what damage type you inflict. Flame Feeder for the bonus 10% damage to burning enemies, Destruction for the critical strike damage bonus, and the stacking generic damage boost whenever you critically strike an enemy. Don't worry, I will place a link to the build in the comments below, which is going to give you a complete Paragon board for the level 100 version of this build. So there you have it, my updated, new and improved endgame ball lightning build that makes a mockery out of all content in Diablo 4. If you enjoyed what I talked about today, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Diablo 4 builds as we get deeper into Season 2. I'm Mr. Ronit, and that's it for today. Peace out, guys.